Hello, guys, and welcome to the Christmas Universe Christmas special for 2023. And in today's episode, we are going to have a chance to review another Top of the Pops Christmas special for this Christmas Eve, and our Christmas special this Christmas Eve. And again, a very happy Christmas Eve to everybody who is watching. By the way, I hope your Christmas Eve's going well. Um, Obviously plenty of stuff to look forward to over the next few days, as we're going to have quite a bunch of Christmas content to look forward to. Should be great. Anyway, with that said, let's begin my review as we're going to look back at a Top of the Pops Christmas special from 1996. Yes, the Christmas Day episode of 1996. Top of the Pops, the episode that was presented by probably the biggest girl group, well, probably one of the biggest groups in 1996, and in fact, the group that dominated the most that year, and that was the Spice Girls, who were the big hitters of 1996, along with many other stars. But obviously, Spice Girls were the top face of that year because of their success story that kind of brought them into the music industry. So without further ado, we're going to take a look at some of the songs that were performed and basically highlighted that look back at some of the big selling songs of 1996. So make sure to like and subscribe, and let's begin. So Christmas Day 1996. Obviously 1996 saw obviously the return of has saw some returns to the music chart, particularly George Michael to name, for instance. He made his return into the chart this year because he hasn't been in the charts previously, because the last time we saw him was roughly the 90s when roughly near the end of the 80s when he made his final appearance, and then he did a song in 1990, and then he kind of disappeared from the charts since, and George Michael hadn't been seen in the charts for a few years. So it wouldn't be until 1996 that he finally came back with a brand new song, and finally came back to the charts for the first time in ages, obviously. So Christmas Day 1996. Obviously 1996 saw obviously the return of has saw some returns to the music chart, particularly George Michael to name, for instance. He made his return into the chart this year because he hasn't been in the charts previously, because the last time we saw him was roughly the 90s when roughly near the end of the 80s when he made his final appearance, and then he did a song in 1990, and then he kind of disappeared from the charts since, and George Michael hadn't been seen in the charts for a few years. So it wouldn't be until 1996 that he finally came back with a brand new song, and finally came back to the charts for the first time in ages, obviously. Now, let's take a look at all the songs that were featured in this Top of the Pop special. So we kick things off with Babylon Zoo with Spaceman. This was a rock group that basically had a pretty good, obviously they went to #1 with Spaceman. This was their #1 hit in 1996. And then we have Boyzone with their version of Father and Son, that a few years later, Rowan Keaton would end up re-releasing that song and actually gets into the top 10 with that, with a new version of Father and Son that was made for Rowan Keaton and a very special guest that he would sing it with in 2004. And then we have George Michael, obviously gets shown in the first of his new songs since the late 80s, and that was Jesus to a Child, which is his first song since then, and this was his first new hit since then. And obviously George Michael finally bringing us a new track from his upcoming greatest hits album, or I guess you could say his greatest hits album that was eventually going to come out, and this was basically part of that collection. And then we have and then of course we have the Michael Jackson song that was the Christmas #1 of '95. Earth Song would get shown as well. And then this leads to 3T, who also worked with Michael Jackson during the year with their first hit into the chart, which was Anything, and it was a bit of a love song that they created for the start of 1996. And then we have Oasis with Don't Look Back in Anger, which was their big #1 hit at the start of '96. And this was their first #1 hit of 1996. Then we have Lighthouse Family Lifted, which was their debut into Top of the Pops, as the Lighthouse Family would finally become regulars on Top of the Pops for the next few years, beginning in 1996. Then we have Blue Tone, Slight Return, which was their big hit of '96. Robert Miles with Child. This was the pianist who brought his piano style song called Child. And then we have Take That with showing highlights of their final performance in Top of the Pops until 2005. This was the year when Take That finally departed from Top of the Pops after the break, after losing Robbie Williams. It led to the group finally deciding they wanted to step away from the music industry, and they made the decision to basically just split up, and that's how the How Deep Is Your Love came into the chart, and that was their final #1 until 2005, when they would return with Patience. But of course, this was their last '90s hit until then. Then we have Gabriella with Give Me a Little More Time, which was her first hit of the year for Gabriella. And then we have Boyzone, Coming Home Now, which of course Boyzone were basically labeled as basically the new Take That after Take That split up. Obviously, Boyzone took over their position and being the big boy band that they are. And then we have Mark Morrison with Return to the Mac. This was his big hit of the year, and that made him a big star in '96. And then we have Manic Street Packers, A Design for Life, which was their first major hit in Top of the Pops. And then we have Prodigy with their first major #1 hit, Firestarter, that basically made them a huge name in '96. Michael Jackson, They Don't Care About Us. This was another hit from his History album. And then we have Gina J with OR, which is her big hit, dance hit of the year. And then we have Madness's Sugi, who you may recognize as the lead singer of Madness. He actually released a song that year called Kila Sella, which is kind of his sort of solo career. This was when he was trying to do a solo career that not entirely sure he did, got a #1 hit. So he kind of did it for a few years, and then he went back to Madness when he realized that Madness was obviously had more popularity over a solo career, which kind of does make sense. That it makes more sense that he would be with Madness than in a solo career. Then of course we have George Michael with Fast Love. This was his second hit of the year. That leads into Tony Rich Project with Nobody Knows, which was another tune that came out during the year. And then we have the Fugees with Kill Me Softly, which was obviously this is Wyclef Jean's group before he became a solo artist, obviously. And then we have the Lightning Seeds with the Free Lions, which obviously the Free Lions football song became #1 that year. And this was when Frank Skinner's joined forces with the Lightning Seed to create that iconic football hit that has become #1 every time it's been featured, or near enough every time it's been featured. And then we have Peter Andre, Mysterious Girl. This was when Peter Andre made his debut into the chart. Celine Dion, Because You Love Me. This was her next big power ballad hit since the Think Twice. And then we have Spice Girls, Wannabe. This was their very first hit into the charts that basically made the Spice Girls got their name mentioned all over the music industry after this debut for Spice Girls. And then of course we have Gary Barlow, who introduced his first run in solo, his first solo career with the Forever Love, which also got a #1 that year. So that was his first ever solo hit he ever did. And then we have Underworld, Bourne's Split, which was another huge dance hit of the year. And then we have Live Enjoy, Don't Stop Moving. That was another dance hit for '96. And then we have Robbie Williams, who finally began his solo career with a cover of George Michael's Freedom. that basically got him into the charts for the first time, and that basically kicked off the Robbie Williams solo career. And then we have the Macarena, because of course you can't have 1996 without the Macarena, because obviously it was a big hit that year. And then we have Dodgy, that was a pretty decent boy group that had a pretty decent time during 95. And then they also had another big hit, which was Good Enough, which I actually kind of enjoy this Good Enough tune. It's quite catchy. And then we have OMC, How Bizarre. This was their first hit into the charts. And then we have Fuji, Ready or Not, which was another big hit of 96. Deep Blue Something, Breakfast with Tiffany. This was their hit of 96. And then the Smurfs made a return to Top of the Pops with I've Got a Little Puppy. That was their sort of featuring the animated Smurf in the charts for the first time since the 70s, when the Smurfs were in the charts and got a #1 that year with the puppets version of the Smurfs, obviously. And then we have Peter Andre Flavor. That was his second hit of the year, which leads into Spice Girls' second hit of 96, Say You'll Be There. So that was their second hit of the year. And then, of course, that leads to Boyzone with their next single, Words, that also got a big hit that year. Celine Dion, It All Coming Back to Me. That was her next big hit of the year. And Chemical Brothers, Setting Sun. This is when Chemical Brothers finally became dance anthem masters of the music industry. And then we have Baby Bird with You're Gorgeous. Great tune from 96. I'm pretty sure most of you are familiar with that hit. Robson and Jerome. This was when we started to see Robson and Jerome finally enter their final hit, sort of their final days in the charts, when they released what you could say was their final hit, What Becomes of a Broken Hearted, which was the I guess you could say their final #1 before they decided to go into acting, which is what these guys end up doing. And then we have The Prodigy with Breathe, which was another big hit for them. And then East 17 with Gabriella with their song If You Ever. This is what made East 17 another #1, this time with Gabriella. And then, of course, the show ends with the Spice Girls becoming the Christmas #1, with Two Become One being that year's Christmas #1. Of course, the Spice Girls would end up getting to #1 with their third major hit of 1996 becoming the Christmas #1 of the year, which was where the Spice Girls would have their dominance in the charts during the Christmas season. So this was pretty much the song that ended the 1996 special, where we see the Spice Girls close it off being the Christmas #1 of the year. A great way to celebrate the Spice Girls and their success in 1996, which really does go to show that how popular this girl group really was in 1996. They were a very, very popular group, and it just goes to show. It's also very unfortunate because as we enter 1997, we start seeing, we start to see Jerry Halliwell decide to walk away from the group, as this would lead into that development of the whole Jerry Halliwell leaving the Spice Girls group and beginning her development of her solo career, to the point where we end up seeing basically just 4 of them remain by the time we get to 1998. So this is pretty much the beginnings. I guess you could say this could eventually ends up leading into the beginnings of that whole dilemma that ends up happening within the Spice Girls. But nevertheless, 1996 was a great debut year for them. And obviously they were a part of Top of the Pops quite a lot that year, considering this was their first year in the music industry. So it was certainly worth it. So there you go. That is basically the Spice Girls' first ever Christmas on Top of the Pops, where they celebrated Christmas 1996, which never gets old, does it? That Top of the Pops. So let me know in the comment section if if you enjoyed watching the 1996 Christmas Top of the Pops, you can watch it on YouTube, by the way, if you want to see the 1996 special. There is a YouTube upload of it, but I would imagine, but of course, BBC Four is going to be showing this around the summertime of next year. We should be getting the 1996 Christmas special by the time we get to the summer of next year. So by the time we get to summer 2024, we should start seeing the Christmas 1996 episode of Top of the Pops be transmitted. So then we'll be able to finally see what brought finally get to see the Spice Girls, finally and finally get to see this episode on BBC Four as we enter the summer of next year. So fingers crossed that'll be something to look forward to if you want to see a HD version of this release. But in the meantime, there is a YouTube upload that you can watch until they until BBC Four broadcasts the 1996 Christmas Top of the Pops. But anyway, thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you all in my upcoming Boxing Day episode where we're going to review the new season of the Santa Clauses from Disney that just went out and just wrapped up just recently. So we'll get to take a look at the second season of the Santa Clauses where Tim Allen finally comes back as Santa Claus, and we get to see what he's been up to this year following the dilemma we saw last year from the family. So see you then.